thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cyndi O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cyndi O'Meara.
And oh my goodness, for all of our listeners, get ready for an amazing show today, one that is going to leave you breathless. It's going to stop you in your tracks and make you really feel like, my goodness gracious me, there's a whole world that's happening out there for so many people that sometimes we can become so oblivious to. We have an amazing woman on the show with us today, Robyn Lewis. Now, Cyndi's going to talk a lot more with Robyn because Cyndi actually met Robyn at an event and fell madly, deeply and passionately in love with this woman, and I can absolutely see why. Robyn has the most inspirational story I think I have ever read. And I think that what she has overcome and created in her own life is astounding, to say the least. I'm in awe of you, Robyn, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear about your story, to hear about your background, to hear about your pains, your sufferings, and how you've brought yourself to where you are today. You are... you're an incredible woman, unbelievable woman. Thank you for being a part of the show and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Look, I have
I'm as nervous as all heck.
And you know, Robyn, this is just a chat. This is a chat with the four of us. Just think of it that way, and that it's about your story. And I was in absolute, from the minute I met you, I was blown away by you because I don't know if you remember, but I was chatting about a book that I was reading, which was called Blood on the Rosary. And since that time, we've actually interviewed Margaret Harrod about it. And I was talking about the incest that had happened in her life to you. And I don't know, I think I was just so into the story that we were just chatting about it, and then you opened up with your story. So this was before the event, and you actually didn't talk about this when you were speaking on the stage, but this was before the event. So can we start with your story when you were a child and living at home, and what you told me?
About the sexual assaults or about my...
Yes.
Yeah. I just grew up in a very violent childhood. I had a very violent alcoholic father that would viciously beat myself, my mother and my siblings on a nightly basis. And from a very young age, with all the drinking that was going on, all his drunk friends and co-workers that used to come to the house and that we used to have to babysit for. Yes, I was regularly taken advantage of sexually. It's still very hard for me to talk about it to this day. The terrible things that happened to me as a young girl, and not only me, to my sisters, and also my brother. My brother was sexually assaulted when he was sent away to the far west as a young boy because he had lots of disabilities, which I believe were as a direct result of the vicious beatings that my mother took when she was pregnant with him. And so he went off to the far west in Sydney, and he was sexually assaulted as well. And yes, just terrible. Some of the terrible things that happened to us as children.
So you're basically babysitting your father's friends' children.
Yeah.
And your sister was too, or your siblings were too. And then they would come home and take advantage of you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to know where were the women? Like, I know your mother was being beaten, but where were the women of these men?
Well, on one occasion, the wife knew what was going on, and when I really rejected his advances, he screamed to his wife, "Get this effing cunt out of here!" And she actually hid me for the night, and she took me home at about 5:30 in the morning while it was still dark before he woke up. So she knew what was happening. Yeah.
So did you finish school?
I went to year 9, but I wasn't very good at school. I spent most of my time like hiding from the other children. We were bullied quite badly at school, so school wasn't my favourite place.
And so once you finished school in year 9, what did you end up going and doing?
I'd always been a worker and I loved horses, so I'd actually been working since I was about 12. I used to work for a local horse trainer and used to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, go to work, and then come home, get ready, go to school, or pretend I was going to school, and I'd go and wag most of the time. Go up the bush and ride the horses, and then come home like nothing had happened, like I'd been at school all day. Yeah. So, and then I would go to work after I got home from school. Yeah.
So didn't anybody figure that out, that's what you were doing? Like, wasn't there truant officers around?
No, not back in the 80s, the early 80s there wasn't. But no, most of us used to wag. But we used to go up to a place that was called Charlie Chinaman's Dam, and it had a dam and an old fruit shed there where they used to sell the fruit from, and we just made like a cubby, and we'd go in there and light fires and smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, and and just hang out there most days. It was easier than going to school and getting bullied, I can assure you.
So you basically had a pretty rough upbringing.
Yeah.
So when did you get into drugs, past cigarettes, past alcohol, and what prompted you to get into drugs?
When I was 15, I went down to Sydney to stay with some city cousins, and we went out one night just hanging out like teenagers do, and they brought out what was I now know it's marijuana, and we smoked marijuana, and from that time on I was hooked on it. It just took away all my problems, and so that's basically when I started smoking marijuana.
It's interesting that you should say it took away all your problems, because there's a very good book out called Chasing the Scream, and it talks about, drug addiction is more likely about the problems and the life someone's leading as opposed to the actual addiction. It's really interesting, but we'll talk. I know we're going to get further into this. So from marijuana, where did you go from there with drugs?
I started taking a drug known as speed, or the old bikey speed they used to call it, or amphetamines. It's a family of the stimulant group. It's an upper, so it makes you alert, it keeps you awake, it suppresses your appetite, and for a while it makes you feel really good, makes you feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof. But that doesn't last long. So I started taking that when I was about 17, and by the time I was 21, I was injecting on a daily basis.
How did you afford to do this?
Well, when I could work, when I was younger and I was working, I could pay for it quite easily. But as my addiction went on, and I was become unemployable because for some reason, some people, it makes them scratch their skin, and so I wasn't presentable to be working in, especially in public, like any public jobs. Then I went to shoplifting and selling marijuana to finance the buying of the speed
And you were living in Sydney still at this time?
No, I didn't live in Sydney. I lived in West Wyalong. I was living in West Wyalong, out in the Riverina, a country town in rural New South Wales. And I moved to Newcastle when I was about 21, 22. Yeah, but I was only there for a short time, and then I went back to the country. Yeah.
I remember when you were doing the talk in Beerowa, you had a photo up of what you looked like and 3 different stages. And 1, you were just a young girl. 2, I think you started to scratch your face. And then 3, your face was a bit of a mess. So I can understand how, people didn't want you to work in the public eye. So,
yeah.
So you went from working and then you had to go to shoplifting in order to make sure that you continued your daily injection of this is still speed?
Yeah.
So tell me about your first interaction with ice.
That was in the late 1999. I was living in Newcastle at the time with my daughter's father. And both of us were shoplifting, and we would give the goods to a drug dealer. And then one day he just said, "I'll try this," and it's a new type of speed. And we tried it, and I actually went blind for 3 days. I couldn't see. Like, my eyes were all like sort of milky, and I couldn't see. And I laid in bed because I was so out of it. I'd taken too much because I was used to taking a big amount of speed. And then this new drug come on the scene, which we didn't realise what it was and how strong it was. So I basically overdosed on it. And so I laid in bed for roughly 3 days, unable to see, unable to really do anything. I was just like awake. I was almost mummified. I was sort of frozen in my body. It's a really bizarre feeling. I'd never like to do it again, but that didn't stop me from using it. As soon as I recovered, I was, I had a love affair with it.
And did that scare you, that not seeing and being a bit mummified for that 3 days, or did the ice not allow you that fear?
I think just the addiction to the needle, and just wanting that drug that would take away all my worries. When I was on it, I didn't have to focus on all the bad things that had happened in my life. It would take me away to somewhere, to a different place, and I didn't have to think about all the trauma.
Let's talk about your daughter. So you said in 1999 the father of your daughter and you were stealing and doing ice. How old was your daughter at the time?
She would have been 11 years old in 1999.
How did she cope? How did she deal with what was happening, or did she not know what was happening?
I think she knew what was happening. To this day, my daughter doesn't see that her father has done anything wrong or has had a drug problem, or, even though he's been in a lot of trouble and whatever, it all seems to come back onto me. It's all sort of been my fault, but he was a lot older than me. He was almost 10 years older than me, and he'd been on heroin for a long time before I'd met him. My daughter, I didn't realise at the time, just how selfish I was. And because I was so beaten down by my partner, her father, I basically, I had no self-esteem and I had no self-worth. And so, it's hard to explain, but it was really hard for me because I was trying to survive myself, if that makes sense. and I've got a really abusive, violent partner. And, I just didn't realise at the time how much I was neglecting my daughter and how selfish I was. You know, it's taken me to get sober to realise just how much drugs and alcohol did affect, everyone.
It's almost like you had a pattern with men. And I know that's changed because you speak so highly of your beautiful man you're with at the moment. But it was almost like this was a pattern. You had a father that was an alcoholic and abusive. You had men around you that were your father's friends that were alcoholic and abusive. And then was it a string of boyfriends or just this one man that was alcoholic, drug addict and abusive to you?
My daughter's father was quite violent to me, but every man that I basically had in my life was either abusive to me, like verbally or physically or mentally. Basically I was screwed over by any man and every man that I was ever involved with in some way or form, some way, shape or form.
What do you think changed that enabled you to meet a man like Andy? Andy, isn't it? Andy?
Yeah. Andy, yeah.
What was it? Just coming clean, or was there more? Was there more in your life that happened that enabled you to open up and be able to, I don't know, have somebody different? Like we always find that there's a pattern in our lives, and we seem to do the same thing over and over again until we realise we have to do something different in order to change that. So what did you do in order to do that?
Well, I think when I moved back to West Wyalong about 2 years ago, I got involved with a childhood friend of mine, and he treated me like absolute crap. Like he only wanted me when it was serving to him, He was very, very self-serving sort of person. And, one day after I'd found out that he'd been cheating on me, I just went, you know what, I don't deserve this. I deserve better. And so I basically started putting myself, first. And I met Andy, and it wasn't rosy to start with because he was set in his ways and I was set in my ways. And, we stopped seeing each other for a little while, and he went his way and I went my way. And then I just decided that I didn't want to get involved with another man, and I actually stopped looking. And then Andy and I's paths crossed again, and we both realised that we were meant to be together. So, now we're engaged and, hopefully getting married at the end of the year, and, we have an amazing life.
Yeah, you definitely do. What I found really interesting when you were talking is the questions that were asked by the people in the audience, which were, I think it was over 100 women of all ages. And I like to try and remember those questions now. And I know that Kim and Karen will probably be able to ask those questions. Actually, Kim has probably one question now, but I'll ask the first one. How do you know if your teenager is using drugs? How do you know?
Well, if it's ice, their habits will change. They will stop having an appetite. Just say your son's got a really good appetite and he's a big eater, and and then all of a sudden he goes from eating everything in the house to not eating. He's starting to lose weight. He's up all night. Just that sort of behaviour. Starts to see maybe sores on their face or on their skin where they're picking at their skin. Not everybody picks at their skin, but, it's probably 50-50. Basically just that. If their habits start changing, their eating and their sleeping habits in particular, if they starting to become moody, aggressive, really short, with no patience and stuff like that, they're good indications that that something's going on, and it's more than likely drugs and probably ice.
Mm.
It's quite a scary predicament, and hearing your whole story, Robyn, not only is it humbling, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing it, because I can't imagine the pain that this inflicts into the family unit, particularly like you just said then, if a son or a daughter, if it's new to a family or your child's got messed up in something. I just firstly want to commend you and honour you for sharing your story, because I think the more we become educated in something like this, the more aware we are perhaps before the real damage occurs, particularly with our youth. I just want to go back to your story, and you didn't ask to be born into a family that had abuse and a terrible father, and obviously a mother that couldn't stand up for herself and her children. If you had one message to say back to your father now as a 52-year-old woman, what would that message be?
What I will say is I didn't realise until my father died 3 years ago that he had a really violent childhood as well. He was beaten like 10 times worse than us. My grandfather was so cruel to his children. What I would say to my father now is go and talk to someone. Go and talk about what's upsetting you, instead of taking it to the bottle. My father hid his pain behind the bottle. And his nickname was actually Friendly Fred. When he was sober, he was the most kindest, nicest person. Everyone liked him. He was highly respected. But once he started drinking, he turned into a monster. And, that old saying's true. Nobody knows what really goes on behind closed doors. So I would say to my father, just go and talk to someone and get some help, instead of drinking alcohol, trying to find the problem at the bottom of a bottle.
Yeah, I just think, and also too, for families like this, I think it's a lot more common than we all give it credit for. And I'd like to ask Karen a question here, if you don't mind, gorgeous, because a part of me feels that someone like Karen, with her knowledge and her skill around psychology, that, Karen, I want to ask you, looking in, for us to look in to see a family like this or see signs of this, knowing that her dad has obviously, now we've learned that he's come from a hideous background as well, and these patterns can be continual. What exactly is this doing to the psyche? And from a quantum physics point of view, how does that cycle stop, and what does it take for someone not only like Robyn, but actually for society to become a part of this? Do you have an answer for that, darling?
Wow, Kimmy, that is such a big question for it. Well, when you ask from a quantum physics point of view, it's almost, it's an easier answer, actually. From a purely physical point of view, I've been listening very intently, and to hear that, Robyn's dad came from an even more abusive family, it makes sense that kind of behaviour is perpetuated from one generation to another. And it does take a willingness to break the cycle. And, somebody like Robyn to say, I've had enough, and it doesn't matter whether you're 5, 15 or 50 in that lifespan, to say enough, so that then the cycle, has a chance to end. And something new be created, and a new normal in the family be created. And like you've said, Robyn, and I just admire you so much. You're such and being so open about this is so heartwarming. And for you to be able to reflect and look back and see, the impact that would have had on your daughter, and what that actually means now in terms of her life rolling forward, and her choices of partner, and, the way that she lives her life. I'm sure you very keenly and attentively watch, every move she makes, for any signs, no doubt.
Well, actually, I haven't spoken to my daughter for about 8 years now, which is quite very heartbreaking, especially with yesterday being Mother's Day. And this is the price I've had to pay for the choices that I've made.
Well, I know that in family dynamics, when these sorts of things occur, sometimes it's very difficult for reconciliation to take place, because as a child they don't understand how these sorts of things could happen, and they see that it's happening to them rather than they become, they're part of a cycle or a system.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up on your daughter, and just and keep trying, and just don't stop. She will come around in time. She will, as she gets older and she understands this more. But just don't give up. Don't stop. Don't stop trying to be a part of her life, because she will get it. She will understand it. She will see your pain in time,
Mm-hmm.
But Kimmy, in terms of the quantum physics part of it and the metaphysics part of the answer, it's all about ending violence. And when we collectively think violent thoughts or have violent behaviors towards ourselves and towards others, if you think of a big universal mind and a quantum soup that we're all swimming in, we're all contributing energetically to this frequency, this vibrational frequency of this planet, through what we do and who we are. And our thoughts are creative, our thoughts are things, and our emotions are things. So if we're contributing to the quantum soup with self-destruction, destruction of others, violence and suffering, then the opposite of that is launched at the same time, is the desire for peace, for harmony. But sometimes we can have too many people weigh in on one side of the scales, which I certainly think that's where the world is right now. And I can't help but wonder if this is one of the reasons why we are in the quandary that we are as a planet. When the weight, the scales are tipped too far in one direction, where we have too many people contributing to that quantum soup with violence, destruction, self-destruction, destruction of others, destruction of harmony, destruction of our animals, destruction of, life in itself. So the way through that, and the answer to that, is to contribute to the quantum soup with peace, harmony. But it has to start with the world inside, like what Robyn has chosen to do for herself. It's got to start from the one here, this piece of life. It's got to start here, bringing peace, healing, calm, awareness to the self, so that then that's what gets contributed to the quantum soup. And then collectively, the more of us that weigh in, the more balance we're able to provide. I know that sounds very airy-fairy, but interestingly enough, science has been able to prove that there is that collective energy, or collective thought, or collective contribution that influences a location. So there are some locations, particularly in the States, where they've done these experiments. There are some locations that are more prone to violence, and they've measured the psychology of those people, and they've measured the psychology of the people of the locations that are more prone to harmony. And they can see that the way that they think is completely different. So I don't know if that answers your question, does it, Kimmy?
Yeah, it's amazing. I just think from, when we hear someone like Robyn speaking, and I can't even imagine the hell you were in. I would love to ask, when you were in it, and I'm sure you knew at a very young age that this was not right, that this was not normal, that it was not, the fact that you were bullied and all the other things that contributed to it, I'm sure you knew that this wasn't right, but it would have been very difficult as a child to make it right or to do what's right, and you would have been subject to things beyond comprehension along with your siblings. If there was an opportunity, and I'm trying to make this along with Karen, with what she's saying, if you knew someone looking in, like that wife that knew that this was happening, if you could go back in time as that young girl, Robyn, what do you think would have been the answer to stop that? I mean, is there a way to stop this when you're in it? Because for so many people, they don't want to get involved. They don't want to, they think it's not their business. But we've got to appreciate, like Karen just said, that domestic violence and abuse is everybody's business. What do you think would have helped stop this? Do you think this could have been stopped when you were a young girl before it got as bad as it did?
Well, all I can say is that when we were children and we were getting beaten, and so was our mother, the neighbours would ring the police. Sometimes family members that were staying with us would ring the police. I can't mention any names on air, but there was 2 policemen in particular in West Wyalong, and one of them went on to become one of the head police people in New South Wales. At the time, he would come to the house and he would take my father back to the pub, and he would have more beers with my father. He covered up for my father when my father had a very serious car accident. So for me and my brothers and sisters, we didn't have any faith in the police, because all we knew is that when the police came, they took Dad away, but not to reprimand him, to actually take him back to the pub and reward him. I know it was in the late 70s, early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, but still, when you're a young person and you believe that the police are like a help authority, someone that's going to help you, and then to have them actually not help you and actually cover up for your father because they were fishing buddies of your father, it's really hard to trust anyone. Like, if you can appreciate that.
Oh, I feel sick. We all feel sick. And I'm sure I'm sure it's still happening today. I'm sure we've seen it in the church. We've heard it through other situations where this is protected. It's a joke. So how the hell, Karen, Cyndi, does this ever stop when the powers that be condone it?
I think that's where we're just imploding on ourselves, and I don't know if we've got the answer yet, but, when you look at our little children, they are looking to our police, our doctors, our churches, our leaders of the community for safety when they don't have that in their own homes. And when that gets betrayed as well, you can imagine why little kids. And, Robyn, I was listening to your story there in terms of you turning to drugs and alcohol as a way to escape the pain. Shit, man. I mean, honestly, I don't know anybody that would do that any differently. You're such an incredible woman that you're actually still here.
Yeah, I know. It amazes me sometimes, because I think back on what's actually happened to me and some of the situations I've been in, and, so close to overdosing on drugs and alcohol, and some of the beatings that I've taken still to this day. Like, I've got a lump on my throat, and I went to the doctors recently, then I went to the specialist at John Hunter in Newcastle, and they couldn't work out what this lump was on my throat, and they started asking me a few questions, and they said, "Oh, have you had any domestic violence?" And I said, "Yes." And, they said, "What sort of domestic violence?" And I said, "I used to get choked within an inch of my life." And I didn't know it at the time, but there's a bone in my throat that's been actually broken and fractured several times. And it's healed, but it's healed now with like a marble-like lump on the right-hand side of my throat. To have someone that you think loves you, like, choke you out to the point where you're seeing stars and you think you're going to die, like, it's an horrific feeling. Like, yeah.
I'm wondering if you could share with us your pathway out of this. I've heard what you've said, and I know we're going to back up with Andy again, but I'd love to hear why do you think you've had to endure this, and what are you doing with it now?
I actually say when I'm giving speeches, I actually say that I don't look at it as 37 years in addiction. I look at it as 37 years in training. So I can help people. I can, there's 99% of the people that contact me. I had a lady today ring me. I was on You Can't Ask That, the ABC TV show last week, the alcoholics version. And she's seen me and she made contact. And it's 99% of the people that I help are the family. The families are the ones that need the help. And I believe that I survived all this so I could go on to educate people and show people that there is a way out. That
Tell us about who helped you and how you found the program that you did and are now conducting in your area. So tell us about how that happened.
Well, I was always, every week I was always at the doctor's, saying, please help me. Like I've been to rehab, I've been to detox, I've been to AAs, I've been to NAs, I've been to GAs, all those sort of organisations, and nothing was working, and I was desperate. I knew I was going to die. My liver function levels were through the roof. Like I was grossly overweight. I was so bloated and fat from just the bad lifestyle. And I just knew I was going to die. And if I didn't do something, and I used to beg the doctor, like, help me, please. And they'd given me drugs and all types of different things which weren't helping and weren't working. And one day my doctor said, look, there's a program that's started up in Newcastle called the Smart Recovery Program, which stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training. And he said, you might be interested in going down there each week. And so every Thursday I made the 40-minute drive to Newcastle, and I sat in on these meetings, and I told my story with other people that was like-minded, that were in the same situation. Like I was in there with people that were prostitutes, that were addicted to drugs, that had lost all their children. I was in there with men that were alcoholics, that had lost their families. The diverse range of people that I was in there with, it just made me look at myself and go, you know what, I'm not as bad as some of these people. I can get out of this. And I continued on that program for about 4 months. And I'll be honest, I fell on and off the wagon so many times, but I kept just getting back up and kept going to the program. And then one night I was really turned it on. I was drinking and drugging, and I really stirred the neighbours up. I'd been playing music loud all night, and I went down the highway. I drove my car. I was still affected by drugs and alcohol, and when I came back, there was a sign in my garden that the neighbours had made and erected in my garden, and it said "The Village Idiot." And that sign, and just how angry my neighbours were at me, just something inside of me just said enough is enough. And I threw everything in the garbage bin that day, and I've never touched anything since.
There's such pressure on our young people this day and age, and I'm sure, as Karen's alluded to and Cyndi is aware, that when we have teenagers at school that are either bullying or being bullied, or they're showing signs, you call them rat bags, you'd call them naughty, you'd call them outcasts, whatever you want to call them. Isn't it time we took this as a sign that something's not right, rather than pushing them into a box and saying they're worse or wrong or they're idiots or all of these things? What do you think we can do for the youth? What if you could wave a magic wand, Robyn? What do you think would be the answer to this, to end it and to help young people that are in these situations come through, and then, of course, help the people perpetrating all of these things? If you could wave a magic wand, what would be your big wish?
Do you mean in regards to violence or in regards to drug taking? Because not everybody that takes drugs and becomes alcoholics have been abused.
I agree. But to me, it's all part of a horrible mosh pit of hideousness. None of it's nice. So is there an answer, or is there different answers for different situations?
I guess my advice is, just talk to your friends and family about what's going on with you. See, when I was in my addictions, it was taboo to talk about that. Like, you couldn't say that you were on drugs or, that you're an alcoholic. Maybe a drinking problem, but definitely not drugs. And so we couldn't, it was a shame thing. So we couldn't talk about it with anyone. We actually used to hide it. But, I wanted to tell people, I wanted people to know that I was struggling, but it was just so taboo that people would look down on you so badly. But that's changed a lot now. People aren't so, it isn't so taboo to talk about things like that now. People are a bit more accepting of it. So I just suggest that they just, talk to their friends and family and make them aware of what's really going on in their lives and what's upsetting them. And
you're really looking for someone, though, to believe in you, someone to hear you, because sometimes when you're sharing that, you can be sharing it with people who are already in that as well. Like, I'm just sensing it must be hard. Who gives you that little piece of hope? Should the school counsellors be more accountable? Should the police be more involved? Do family meetings need to happen more? Like, it seems to me we're turning a bit of a blind eye. I know you're saying that it's more accessible now, but I still see massive problems. I've had teenagers just go through school and I still see massive problems around violence, drugs, alcohol, sex, all of these things. Is it getting any better, do you think?
Well, a lot more young people are killing themselves these days. Right. They're committing suicide. What I believe, and I'm going to be involved with the special commission into Ice that's coming up soon, the commissions that they're having around New South Wales. And one of my things that I want for them to put in place is that there's not enough rehabs. But when you just say I was still in addiction and I rang up today and I said, look, I'm full-blown ice addict and I'm an alcoholic and this, that and the other and I need to go and get help, they would say, righto, Robyn, you ring this number, it's called Access Line, and then you'll ring that number, you'll talk to someone, they'll take all your details, they'll make sure you're not suicidal. If you're suicidal, they'll get someone to come straight around to you. But unless you're suicidal, they'll say, okay, just wait and someone will contact you. So in about, usually takes at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks, someone will contact you and say, okay, now, this is the problem. Just wait here, hang tight. Someone else will contact you. And that's how it goes. And what I want to see happen is that when somebody rings up and they're crying out for help, they're in addiction and they need help, there's facilities put in place where people can go straight away that day. Like, they just go into treatment straight away. And that's what the problem is. It's a huge funding problem, and there needs to be more facilities because that's the problem. There's such a shortage of spaces in rehabs and facilities for people in addiction to go to, that they need places that are going to take people straight away. Because with myself, I would be desperate and I would be on the phone and I'd be like, help me, at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, help me, I can't live like this anymore. And that would be the whole process that I'd have to go through. And by the time someone actually got back to me and said, hey, Robyn, we're here to help you, I'm like, stick that. I'm back on my little tangent. I haven't got a problem. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, When someone cries out for help, they need help then and there. It cannot wait. And that's what the biggest problem is in Australia, I believe. There's not enough. Sorry?
I'm with you 100%. I've created a foundation or a charity called Spirit Hive. And having gone through my own suicidal journey, when I was looking for help at 3 o'clock in the morning on bended knee with a handful of pills, there was nobody and there was nowhere that I could go. And the way that the system was set up, there's nothing for anybody that needs crisis support like that. I was just texting the girls just then. I said, this is a major problem, and our governments are not set up to provide support at this level. Therefore, it has to be at the community level. But the real tragedy occurs is, like, I look at Spirit Hive, where we're all about, depression, anxiety, and suicide, and of course addiction comes into that. For us to get funding, I can apply for a grant today that's maybe $2,000 or $5,000, but that doesn't cover anything. So I can apply for that grant today, but I don't get that money until October, November. And it's the whole system is nobody's looking at it well enough in such a way to say, okay, well, the government certainly can't help given the magnitude of the problem. It is up to community groups. And there are a lot of us like Spirit Hive that are out there contributing, doing our piece. But to get the funding to be able to make this service available to all of the community free, immediately, without having to wait for a call back, that's where the problem actually is. I don't believe that we've got anybody actually looking at it significantly enough. We're all talking about it here at community level, but it hasn't made its way up to the people that make the decisions about where the money goes.
No, exactly. And but you're never going to stop addiction. You're never going to stop drug use and alcohol abuse and all of this stuff. But there's got to be. That's why people kill themselves, because they're driven to the point where they can't do anything themselves, and there's no help for them outside of, their little box. And so they kill themselves, because I was suicidal on a weekly basis. Like, I wanted to die because I thought, I can't live like this anymore. Yeah. Like, it really makes me cry. It upsets me to think that, I used to cry out for help, but there was no help. And it's sad, and that's why people are killing themselves. Like, back in my day, people didn't commit suicide, thankfully, but they did, but not to the capacity of what's happening today. People are just frustrated. They're so consumed by their addiction, and there's no help, and they just think it's easier to, shoot themselves or swallow a handful of pills and put themselves out of their misery. And I totally get that. The government needs to step up. I mean, they have a crisis over in Haiti, or, Cyclone Katrina, whatever, overseas, earthquakes and whatever, and they give hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, what's wrong with the cyclone and, what's happening in Australia as far as, like, the ice epidemics, because when you're on these stimulant drugs like ice, what goes up must come down. So when you're high, everything's okay. When you come down, like, you hit with a ton of bricks, and the depression is so bad. Like, I can see why people kill themselves. The government really needs to take a look at, this part of it, and do something.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely spot on. I think we've got. I was looking at the World Health Organization at the moment. One person every 40 seconds takes their life, and by the end of next year, it'll be one person every 20 seconds. So we're expecting the statistics to double, and already they're at record high levels. but we're expecting that to double. And I think that, while there are so many of us looking at this at a community level, it absolutely has to be escalated. It can't just, it can't just be left the way that it is. It's insufficient. And I agree with you. I think addiction is probably always going to be an issue because we lack so much connection. We lack so much harmony. And there's so much suffering and there's so much violence and there's so much self-destruction and destruction that people are looking for a way to escape.
Absolutely.
We are. Yeah. And I think we have to recognize that and say it's not, if you say that you're looking for a way to escape and you happen to use drugs and alcohol, well, you know what? You're just being honest. Everybody else is they're just not being honest. They think it, they feel it, but they're just not being honest about it,
Exactly. And I say that the opposite to addiction is connection. People need to stay connected. That's the problem. Like with me, I had a really, like all my brothers and sisters, we've been estranged because of the way that we were brought up. Even to this day, I struggle to have proper relationships with my brothers and my sisters. And so therefore, I believe that being disconnected kept me in addiction longer than I should have stayed in it. If I had someone that cared about me and said, come on, Rob, give me a hand, you're worth something. Come on, get up and beat this. I didn't have anyone. No one cared. I used to be in my house for weeks, days, weeks on end, and wouldn't leave because I was covered in sores. And not one of the neighbours would come and say, are you okay? I could have been dead in there. No one cares. And it's very sad.
Robyn, I think the more we share the stories, though, and the more we share the vulnerability and the emotional pain that things like this cause, you can't help but have empathy. The judgments drop when you start to understand the full story, the full picture of why people become addicted or how we get into these situations or what we've been born into or however it is that we've had to or have chosen to live our lives. I'd love to move the gear, as in you have survived this, and all three of us are high-fiving silently in the background just how incredible it is that you have. What do you think was the number one thing that kept pulling you through? You said you were suicidal every day. You said you wanted it to end at times for yourself, but something kept pulling you no matter what. What was that? And how do we instill that into those that are in pain?
I can't explain it. I always knew that I was a decent, kind, caring person. I have the biggest heart, and even though people have ripped it out and trod on it and torn it to pieces and, I always knew that I had a big heart and I was a good, kind person. And, I always knew I deserved better, and I don't know whether that kept me going, that got me through it, or whether I just wanted to prove everyone wrong. I don't, or whether, like I said, I was needed. Because when people come out of addiction, most people, especially with 6 addictions like I had, they don't want to go and talk about it to anyone. They want to hide it. Most people are in denial. They won't put their hand up and go, yeah, I was an alcoholic. Yeah, I took ice. Yeah, I smoked pot. Yeah, I've done this. I've done that. Most people are like, oh, no, not me. I didn't do any of that. And so, people like me with the lived experience that can tell it how it is and be so raw and open and honest to what it's really like and why I became the addict that I did. People like myself are needed. When I go and speak, people are just in awe and they have no understanding of what it's really like to be an addict. They've only read things or, what they see on television. They don't see the heart and the soul of the addict, and that person is a real human being with real feelings. They just think, oh, that's another drug addict, that's another alcoholic. Look at her, they don't see past all that. And I believe that's probably why I did get through, because I can tell my story, and people are now inspired by me. They say, well, if she can beat 6 addictions, I can beat my addiction, and it's a wonderful feeling. And I feel like my life hasn't been in vain. And I said to myself years ago, I don't want to die and be remembered as a drug addict and an alcoholic and, an uncontributing person to the society. I want to be remembered for something different. And now I am. I'll be remembered for the person that, inspired so many other people to go and get help. And that's a wonderful feeling. Better than any drug, I can tell you.
Sometimes I do look at those sorts of experiences, Robyn, and I wonder if, there is a bigger purpose and meaning at play. And when I look at the universe and I see how out of balance we are, I can't help but think that sometimes, given that we are so out of balance, there are people like you that are there to bring us back into balance and to be the support and to be the coach and to show people that there is another choice that they can make. There's another option, and it doesn't matter how old you are. Life always begins when you decide it should, So I congratulate you for doing that sort of work. I think it's really, I think it's really amazing. So whereabouts are you speaking? Like, what sort of places are we speaking, and can we help to get you out there a bit more?
I've sort of, since I moved to Newcastle with my fiance, I sort of have scaled back a bit. But it's funny you say that, because I just said to my partner this morning before he went to work, I said, I'm going to try and get back into it and do a bit more, because it's needed so much. So I guess the way you can help me is, if there's anyone out there listening that is interested in hear my story, like at a community-based group like Rotary, or want to put a drug forum together and have me speak at it, or any place like that, that would be wonderful. I'm writing a book at the moment, and like I said, I'm going to be involved with the Special Commission into ICE. So I don't know what after that, but like I said, I'm not really doing much at the moment, but that's my choice. I certainly am interested in ramping it up a bit more.
That's fantastic. I think the more people that we can get you to be in front of, then the bigger difference you're going to be able to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Robyn, when you spoke at Beerowa to those women on International Women's Day, the questions that they asked were pertinent, I think, to that community and what was happening in that community. And you were able to answer them, whereas if they asked me those questions, I'd have no idea. I wouldn't know what I was looking for. And I know you described a light bulb and something else, if you see that in their room, because, you did practical demonstrations on what might be happening, and you told these women exactly what was happening, but their questions were just so probing about an addictive life.
Oh, look, like I said earlier, people, they just want to know. And like I said, 99% of everybody that I come in contact with or who contacts me is a family member, because they're the ones that are left to pick up the pieces. They're the ones that are suffering. Like, imagine being a mother and every night your son or your daughter goes out, you don't know whether you're going to see him again. Are they going to die from a drug overdose? Are they going to die in a robbery? Are they going to commit suicide? Are they going to die in a car smash? And so it's the families that really, really struggle with this type of thing. And I think they just want to know. And I can't say for sure, but, there was quite a few of the women that came up to me afterwards and said, you know, such and such is my son, or, you know, my nephew, or my brother, or my partner's got a problem. And I think they just want to know because they're so uneducated about it. And there's not enough people out there that are speaking about it, because it's so, you know, it's people just aren't talking about it as much as they should be. But I'm actually trying to get into the schools, but I keep getting shut down because they say that it's too confronting. You know, well, what's too confronting? Like, you know, being told what it's like if you get caught up in it, or you know, possibly committing suicide down the track because you've not been made aware of what really happens in the life of an addict.
I just find the whole thing frustrating, and I guess that's all of us are frustrated. And I really believe that, you know, number one, our community needs to step up. Number two, our neighbours need to say, hey, are you okay? I find it interesting that the village idiot really hit you, really got you. And I don't think that's the way that we need to deal with it. But it's interesting that was your point of no return and your point of moving forward and not going back to addiction and things like that. So maybe it's a neighbour, if anybody's listening and you might suspect something, maybe it's, you know, going and saying, hey, are you okay? Can we help in any way? I think people are scared, Robyn. I think we're scared to become involved. Would you agree with that?
Well, myself, like, it wouldn't bother me, but I can see how people would not want to be involved. Like, most people have their own stuff to deal with, and you know, especially if they see someone that, and this whole ice thing is very scary to people. Like, you know, it's all people see on TV and stuff is, and all they hear is the violent part of ice. Like, you know, I did more damage on alcohol, and I was more violent and aggressive on alcohol than I ever was on ice. I know people that go to work every day, they're on ice. I'm not saying that ice is to take ice and it's acceptable, but the government has got the people so scared about ice that, oh, people that are on it are going to kill you and they're psychos and all this. That's not really how it is. You know, like when you see that ad on TV and that young fella's in the hospital and he's smashing up the hospital with the chair, like, that doesn't really happen. Like, there's probably circumstances why that's happened. He's probably drank copious amounts of alcohol after being on ice for 3 days, and you're really tired and you're not eating, so, you know, it just fries you. But there's probably circumstances why they flip out, you know. Sorry, I've got lost to where I was up to, Cyndi.
No, I think you answered it succinctly and beautifully, and I think it's really important. You know, there's going to be a lot of people of our listeners may not want to listen to this podcast. There will be a lot of people that, like Cyndi just said, will be afraid to listen to this podcast or listen to what you've got to say. I just concur with Cyndi and Karen that we all need to help each other to get you out there. I find it ludicrous that schools don't want to have you come in and talk about it. I mean, they have people come into schools that have been badly injured and maimed in car accidents, so they want to talk about driving badly, be it on alcohol or drugs, and they have people like that. Why would you not want someone who has truly lived a really tough life to actually show that no matter what, there is hope, there is faith, there is trust in humanity, that there is a resolve, there is an opportunity. And I'd love to say to you, ask you on behalf of the three of us, to the people that are brave and vulnerable enough to listen to this podcast, what would be your message to all of us? What's your take-home message that you would love us to all know Robyn Lewis by?
Just I'm just, you mean my message to them or a message about me? Sorry.
I just think, what's your message? What is it that you want the world to know? Why have you lived through this? Why have you enjoyed? Why are you doing the work? Why do you want to get this out there? What is your message to those people listening, brave enough to listen to this? What's your message to us?
It's just, don't judge a book by its cover, and just if you know someone that's like in addiction and whatever, like just give them some empathy and some understanding, and sorry, I'm just just a little bit overwhelmed by everything.
I bet.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, Robyn. If you know people that are suffering, or you see people that who are affected by addiction, don't turn away from them, turn towards them. It's the very thing that this planet is lacking, and it's very much what they need. It's very much what we all need. And so coming back to your question originally, Kimmy, about that quantum contribution, let's stop turning away from each other no matter what. Let's start turning towards each other so that we can, even prevent these sorts of things even having to occur in the first place.
Perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Robyn, you've been amazing today, my love. Thank you so much for all of your beautiful contributions. This has probably been a very difficult conversation, but I tell you, you've made a difference in the lives of so many people who've been listening to today's show. So congratulations for having the courage to be able to step up and share your experiences with so many people with the intention of making a difference and making this world a better place because you're a part of it. We salute you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thanks.
Thanks, Robyn.
No worries.
For all of our listeners, you know what? If you Google Robyn Lewis, you're going to find some amazing articles that this woman has written. If you are interested in being in touch with Robyn, or you need some help, or you'd like to chat with Robyn, please just go to our Facebook page at allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat. and post your questions right there, and we can get you in touch with Robyn, no problem at all. If you know anybody or schools that would like to speak to Robyn or have her come and speak, then you also need to do that through our Facebook page, and we'll put you in touch with Robyn directly. So, Robyn, we hope that this is going to be a really good start or a really good part of your career when it comes to making a difference in the lives of others and of being of service and putting your incredible experiences to incredibly good use. So we're looking forward to supporting you as much as we possibly can with that.
Okay, thank you.
You are most welcome. For all of our listeners, head on over to allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat, and you can post your comments and questions there. Alternatively, allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up-for-a-chat. In the meantime, though, make sure that you tune in here next week on Up for a Chat and become part of the ripple effect where you're changing the world. We'll see you on the ride. Bye for now, everybody.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.